Hey guys, we're back. We're in Unwrapping the Pharaoh's lesson number 13, the mystery of the Hyksos people. Okay, so we start with the transition of the 12th and 13th dynasty. Okay, and at this point, there's lots of confusion. The dynasty is in complete shambles. And like I said, lots of confusion. And the confusion not only by the kings who took over after the 12th dynasty, the beginning of the 13th dynasty people, but also by the historians trying to figure out what on earth happened at this transition period. There was a complete lack of continuous dynastic succession. Basically, it didn't go father to son to son to son like it usually does. There was a number of different kings who reigned, and a lot of puppet rulers or dominant viziers who are ruling in their stead. And so it just really leads to all this confusion. Eventually, we get to Neferhotep the First. Okay, has some statues found that are now in the Cairo and Bologna museums. He was the last king before the Asiatic or Jew slaves disappeared from Kahun. They found a scarab with inscriptions with his name on it and other papyrus with information on it. And it was the latest dated object from the first occupation of the town. And it can assist in establishing some of the chronological events that we have happened at Kahun, okay? And what happens then is these mystery, right, is going on, and they don't really know what's happening. And we believe that this might be the Pharaoh of when Moses returned and said, "Let my people go," right? So we believe that this Neferhotep the First is the king, the Pharaoh who has to deal with Moses and the plagues. So let's talk about Moses and the plagues for just a little bit, okay? Hopefully you all know this Bible story and you've read it recently. But Moses gets told he needs to confront Pharaoh, okay? And he's supposed to tell him, "Let my people go." God says, "Let my people go." So he goes to Pharaoh and he tells him this. And Pharaoh says, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him?" And Moses says, he's the God of Israel, right? He's Jehovah. And Pharaoh says, "I don't care." So Moses kind of leaves and he comes back a second time, and Pharaoh says, "Well, show me a miracle then. If your God is so great, show me a miracle." So he takes his rod and he throws it on the ground and it turns into a serpent. Pharaoh says, "So what? My magicians can do the same thing." And so they do. And so God keeps telling Moses, "You need to go back." And Pharaoh keeps saying no. And so we go through these list of plagues. Basically, the next ones we call them, or the book's calling them the drastic plagues because they were. And as we go through these, I want to highlight kind of the importance that the Bible doesn't necessarily talk about as in relation to the Egyptian belief system that's going on, okay? So the first one is the Nile is turned into blood, right? They could not drink the water, so that's a significant impact on them. But it's also directly against their Egyptian god, Hapi. One of the most important gods. It was the river god, the fertility god, and it showed that the God of Israel was more powerful than the gods of Egypt. And again, after that, Pharaoh says, no, he won't let his people go. Then you had frogs. And some people like frogs, some people are afraid of frogs, but at this level, nobody liked the frogs, okay? Frogs were literally everywhere. They were in your houses, they were in your food, they were in your streets. Everywhere that you tried to go, there was the frogs. And again, this was directed at one of the Egyptian gods, the god Heket, who was the frog god. And he was revered as the creator of life. Tadpoles somehow mysteriously and miraculously were turned into frogs. And, so this god was just worshipped. And however, again, as this god, the Egyptians believed the gods were living in the animals. And all of a sudden you have this god or this animal, the frogs, everywhere. And suddenly they don't like it. They do not like the god's appearance everywhere. And they try and, Pharaoh, through most of these plagues, Pharaoh says, "Okay, you make this go away, and then I'll let your people go." And then it goes away and he doesn't let them go. The next one is lice, and I'm not going to talk about that a whole lot, but have you ever had to deal with lice or any type of small, annoying bug. And the Bible says that they were like the dust of the earth. That many of them everywhere. And it's horrible. Okay. Next came flies. And the flies were probably not like we think, little flies just kind of run around being annoying. They were probably the bowfly, which inflicts a very painful sting that's found in the area. And then they were literally swarming everywhere. Imagine just, literally to the point where you can't open your mouth, can't open, you have to cover your nose because these flies are just everywhere trying to get in them. So again, they're swarming Pharaoh's palace. They're swarming everything. Just everywhere are flies, and they're stinging and biting. And Pharaoh says, okay, just make the flies go away, and I promise I'll let the people go. So the flies go away, and Pharaoh changes his mind. The next thing to happen is all the livestock are killed, okay? The livestock of the Egyptians. Remember, these things weren't happening to the Israelis. So it's directed, again, this is directed specifically against some of the Egyptian gods. The Egyptian god Hathor, which is a popular deity, the cow goddess, and all these cows, right, are dying. And also the Serapis bull, a very important god. And so now all of this livestock are dead. Same thing, Pharaoh changes his mind. Then the plague of boils occurs. It's painful boils on every Egyptian. And yet again, Pharaoh refuses to let his people go, let the Israelis go. The next plague is hail. And depending on where you live in the United States and other places, hail is a semi-regular occurrence, depending, like I said, where you live. But in Egypt, where they seldom get any rain, they almost never get hail. Yet suddenly the hail comes, and it's just devastating, pounding hail. And it destroys everything. Everything that's outside and in the fields, whether it's people, trees, crops, it's just everything is destroyed by this hail. Gets completely knocked down and into the ground and ruined. Again, Pharaoh won't let the Israelis go. So then the locusts come. And the locusts, the Bible says, covered the face of the earth and ate whatever green was left. So even that tree may have been knocked to the ground and broken, it was still kind of green, or maybe some wheat or things in the field that got knocked down you might be able to save. But then the locusts come and destroy it completely, eat everything. And still, Pharaoh refuses. The last one of these is the darkness, okay? And again, this is towards one of the Egyptian gods. The Bible in Exodus 10:22 says, thick darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. So at this point, the light of the sun was completely blocked out against the god of Egypt, Ra, the sun god, right? One of the most important gods. Amun-Ra, the most powerful of all Egyptian gods, and he's being put in place by the God of Israel. Yet Pharaoh still refuses to let the Israelites go. This is where it gets very serious for all of Egypt, especially the Pharaoh, because at this point, God has had enough, and he says, I'm going to kill the firstborn of everybody. And all of the firstborn of Egypt families die at midnight. Pharaoh's son dies too. However, God provides an escape for the Israelis, right? He tells them, this is known as Passover, right? Tells them to kill a lamb and put the blood on the doorposts. And when the angel, the destroying angel, comes through to kill all the firstborn, he'll pass over the houses that have done this. And this is something that's still celebrated in the Jewish community today in an annual ceremony, okay? So at this point, Pharaoh's son is killed. Pharaoh is just devastated. And finally he says, you know what? Take your people and go. Get out of here. Almost demands them to leave. Just leave. I've had enough. So Israel packs up in the middle of the night and they leave. After they're gone for a little while, and I'm sure Pharaoh is sad and he's crying, he's upset, and then he starts to get mad. And he's getting madder and madder. And finally he says, you know what? Get all my army, every person, all of the army, and we're going to go get those Jews, those Israelis, and we're going to kill them. So he starts pursuing the Jews with his whole entire army, and they get to the Red Sea. At this point, the Israelis are trapped at the edge of the Red Sea, and they're literally crying and saying, why did you do this to us, Moses? You should have just left us in Egypt. At least we could have lived there. Now you brought us out through the desert to the edge of the Red Sea to kill us all here at the edge of the Red Sea. But God has a different plan. And at that point, the Red Sea gets parted in half. They walk across on dry land. Pharaoh and his army try to chase after them through this gap in the Red Sea. Once the Israelis are over on the other side and the Pharaoh and his army is right in the river or in the sea returns, killing Pharaoh and his whole entire army. And that's the story we have in the Bible, right? You say, okay, so what's the historical significance? A couple things. If this is true, right? If the Bible story is true, then we should find evidence of it in Egyptian records. There should be, and we do know there is evidence of Israeli slaves in Egypt building the pyramids and other things, correct? We have a Dr. Rosalie David in his book, Pyramid Builders of Ancient Egypt. He shows proof of the Israelis or, slaves building the pyramids. And he also says that that they disappeared kind of overnight. There was this mass exodus that cannot really be explained. And the quote that he says is, "The quantity, range, and type of articles of everyday use which were left behind in the houses may suggest that the departure was sudden and unpremeditated." It just happens, right? So, but it runs us into this problem with dating that we've talked about in a different lesson, okay? The accepted dates would put the Exodus around 1445 BC. But that's right in the heart of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, a period of total power and affluence, very well-documented time. We have the name and length and reigns of almost every king known during that time period. There's inscriptions and papyrus show military victory after victory during this time, and there's absolutely no proof of the Red Sea and the plagues during this time period. All the mummies are carefully preserved, so it doesn't work. The dates don't work. However, there's a papyrus that they found from Memphis, and it was now acquired in the Leiden Museum in Holland from 1828. And on there was some writing from the scribe Impure, okay? And he gives a graphic description of conditions in Egypt at the time of the writing. His document probably made originally around the end of the 12th dynasty, so it puts us right in this time period. And I want to read from you in your book, page 102, what this writing says from the scribe Impure. It says, "Nay, but the heart is violent. Plague stalks through the land, and the blood is everywhere. Nay, but the river is blood. Does a man drink from it? As a human he rejects it. He thirsts for water. Nay, but gates, columns, and walls are all consumed with fire. Nay, but men are few. He that lays his brother in the ground is everywhere. Nay, but the son of the highborn man is no longer to be recognized. The stranger people from outside are come into Egypt. Nay, but corn has perished everywhere. People are stripped of clothing, perfume, and oil. Everyone says there is no more. The storehouse is bare. It has come to this. The king has been taken away by poor men." Impure papyrus from the Leiden Museum. He kind of lays out, some evidence that did happen. Then you have what the whole title of this chapter is, right? The mystery of the Hyksos people. So who are the Hyksos people? What happened with them? Why is it a mystery? Well, soon after this time period, we have the Hyksos who just swarm into the Egypt and completely take over the area and the people. Josephus, at some point, is quoting Manetho and says this: "There was a king of ours whose name was Timaeus. Under him it came to pass, I know not how, that God was averse to us. And there came, after a surprising manner, men of ignoble birth out of the eastern parts, and had boldness enough to make an expedition into our country, and with ease subdue it by force. Yet without our hazarding a battle with them. They afterwards burnt down our cities and demolished the temples of the gods, and used all the inhabitants after a most barbarous manner. Nay, some they slew and led their children and wives into slavery. This whole nation was styled the Hyksos." So, how would they come into Egypt and basically take it over without even a battle? Could be because Pharaoh's army was killed in the Red Sea, right? Neferheptop the first, the king, that this Pharaoh that we believe was during this time, his body is never found. Could that also be because it's laying at the bottom of the Red Sea? Maybe. Okay, so then let's look at who, if we don't know where this king went or this Pharaoh went, who succeeded him? His son was Nefertop, okay? He was the son of Neferhotep the first, yet we know through records that he did not inherit the throne. There's no records of why. Is it possible that maybe he was killed during the plagues as the firstborn of the Pharaoh? We do know that Subkotehep the fourth, which was Neferhotep's brother, reigns next. And he's the one that gets overthrown by the Hyksos. So there is some information. There's this mystery of the Hyksos people, right? How are they able to come in and overthrow the Egyptians, a powerful country, without even a battle taking place? If the Bible story is true, and the plagues affected the Egyptians, basically killed their economy, killed their wealth, killed their firstborn, killed their pharaoh, killed their entire army, then this would be possible. Now the dating could be wrong, but it makes sense based on the Egyptian records. Make sure you're reading this material. Thanks.